Welcome, Teddy Atlas, to Ringside Seat with Tazzy. How you been, Teddy?
Good. How are you? How is everybody down under? I hope well.
Everyone's great, mate. Everyone's great. It was an honour to finally meet you in Riyadh at the Fury Usyk fight, which was a great event.
Yeah, it was a great dramatic fight, an iconic fight it turned out to be. Just what is deserving of history making night where for the first time in 25 years you unify the heavyweight belts, which is long overdue, obviously. So it's good for the sport, good for the fans. But if you're going to do that, you hope and you pray that you're going to get a fight that is up to it, a fight that is, deserving of that marquee. And you sure did. You gotta. I mean, if that fight didn't have to be for anything, and it was just a special fight. To see Fury ahead, the bigger man, ahead in the fight into the sixth round, looked like he was going to dominate. And then Usyk, whose greatest asset is his ability to win, to
Yeah.
find a way to win. There was so many things on display in the great sport of boxing. I mean, you got a chance to ask the age-old question that's always asked in boxing: who wins between the good big man and the good little man? So you got a chance to pick at that. Again, first time since Lennox Lewis, 25 years, you know, unified the heavyweight titles against Evander Holyfield. So, and I wish we could get that in all the divisions
Mm.
because it would make the sport even more healthy, and it would bring us to a place that we haven't been at, where for so many years, where you can walk down the street and ask somebody who's the champion of a certain division, they could actually tell you
Yeah,
instead of going into the phone book
that's
to
right.
try to figure it out,
That's right.
and looked at how many, Joneses and James and Richardsons and O'Reillys. And I mean, it was simple. And it really stood. It's been, it's been really, it's been so liquid, just taken away from what the sport is supposed to be world champion. It doesn't say world champions. When you're talking in boxing, you say, who's the world champion? Not
That's
who's the
right.
world champions.
Yeah.
So it is diminished. The oldest sport in the world, besides the marathon, maybe, the oldest sport in the world, it has diminished its credibility by having such a proliferation of champions, all because of greed,
Yeah.
all because these organizations want to make sanction fees and make
Yeah.
more money. And again, it's almost a fallacy to say I'm the champion of the world. Wait a minute, hold on a minute. Back in the 20s to 30s to 40s to 50s to 60s, yeah, you were the champion of the world.
Correct.
Now, when you make that statement, you got to look and say, you mean you're part of the champion
Mm.
along with this guy, along with this guy, along with this guy, along with his cousin, along with his brother, along with his next door neighbor. You mean you share that glorious title, that special titles are supposed to be special. You share it with five guys, six guys. I mean, they have silver champs, gold champs. You
Oh,
know,
interim, everything.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's
Champion in
just
recess. It's ridiculous. Yeah.
it was nice to see, to be there, to unify the most important title in sports for me, the heavyweight champion. And the reality behind it was just a matter of how long it would take until somebody stripped one of them and started breaking it apart again.
Well, they've
And
done it
it
already.
didn't take long. It didn't take long because next month you're gonna have, Joshua fighting Dubois for the IBF title, which, a couple of weeks ago belonged to Usyk.
That's
so,
right. Yeah.
And it used to be that you could only earn or lose the title in the ring.
Yep.
And, who gave these organizations the right and the power, to again just really run roughshod over the sport and diminish the sport in the way they do. But at the end of the day, it's still a great sport. I always say the sport is always great.
Of course.
Two men getting in a ring, no matter where you came from in life, no matter who your parents were, no matter how life had treated you, poorly, unfairly, whatever. Anyone has their story. But at the end of the day, in this sport, if you're prepared, if you're trained hard enough, if you are dedicated enough, if you're determined enough, if you're tough enough, on one given night, you can get in that ring and in 36 minutes, you can make life fair. That's the greatness. That's
right.
the greatness of this sport. The thing that's not great about this sport, quite frankly, and a lot of people don't like it when I say it, and that's why I'm not working ESPN regular now and I'm doing UFC, but I have my own podcast. I have Pro Box. I'm doing good, thank God. But I was silenced because I said the one thing that is not good, not great, is the executors, the administrators of this sport. They are not great.
Yeah.
They are where the sport gets hurt. It's not the fighters, it's them.
That's right.
It's the people that are supposed to look out for the sport, administrate the sport.
Yeah.
But we have some great fighters that are, I always look at the 30s, the 20s.
Oh, me too.
The 40s. Fighters that fought 200 pro fights, 300 pro fights, had 100 knockouts, fought everybody.
Henry
and
Armstrong.
Fought the toughest fights 5, 6, 7 times.
Yeah.
And I look at those eras, but I look here now, and you have great talent. You have guys that can fit into those eras. The problem has been that, unlike those eras, you didn't have them fighting each other.
Yeah.
You had the promoters taking advantage, only fighting guys they controlled. So you didn't get the fights across the street that would help the sport, would help the fan, would make the fan happy. But now with Turki Al-Sheikh coming into the picture from Saudi Arabia, suddenly you have those fights. And it is, I don't know how long it's going to last.
Yeah.
But we need infrastructure. But right now, the sport is getting the patient who is sick, which was the sport a little bit, is getting the medicine it needs. And the fans are getting the fights they wanted.
That's right.
And it's making the sport more relevant because I was scared. The sport was becoming less relevant. It was.
Yeah.
It was becoming much less relevant. And it doesn't deserve to be less relevant. And now it's coming back. I don't know how long I'm going to keep up.
Yeah.
But it's always nice when the sun is shining.
That's right, Teddy. I go back to the, Joe Louis, Henry Armstrong, Willie Pep, Sandy Sadler, Jimmy Wild, all the great, Harry Greb, the legends that fought, 15, 20 times a year. Don't
forget Henry Armstrong.
He held three divisions at once: featherweight, lightweight, and waterweight.
Full titles, no junior titles.
No junior titles.
And he fought Severino Garcia for the middleweight
He should
15
have won
rounds
it.
draw,
Should
and he
have won
won.
it.
They robbed
Yeah,
him. They robbed
that's
him
right.
because he wouldn't do
Unbelievable.
business with the fellas. So they robbed him. So he should have held 4 full
Unbelievable.
division titles,
Yeah,
and he went and he defended them simultaneously
yeah.
in 2.5, 3 months. I mean,
Unbelievable.
the guy was a monster, and he had like 200 fights. He had 100 something knockouts. He fought everyone, and this is a guy that teaches a life lesson. He
Yeah,
lost 3 of his first 5 fights, and he became one of the greatest fighters of all time.
yeah.
What a great life lesson to our young people
True.
out there, whatever vocation they're in, whatever they do. Don't be, do not be, do not be taken from your dreams because of failure at the beginning. Look at it as experience. Look at it as an opportunity to find out what you need to find out, an opportunity to go deeper, an opportunity to go harder, an opportunity to check yourself. How much do you want to do this? An opportunity to turn lights on in a room inside yourself that you haven't turned on yet. That's how Armstrong looked at it.
Yeah,
And I remember a writer years ago asked him when he was young. I read a story where a writer asked him, what victory was the one that was most important to you becoming Henry Armstrong, one of the greatest fighters of all time? Which one was it? And he said, without even hesitating, every one of my losses. So for the young people out there, whatever you do not look at a loss as a death sentence. Do not look at a loss as something that just crushed your dreams. No, look at it something to not only learn from, but to grow from, to get better, to actually find yourself,
that's
like
right.
Henry Armstrong did. And he had the
Unbelievable.
greatest fighting nickname in the world, Homicide Hank.
Hurricane.
It doesn't get better than that.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Yeah, that's right, Teddy. So, just what do you know about the Australian history of boxing, Teddy? You obviously we spoke in Saudi. We mentioned Jeff Fennick and a few. Who's some of the fighters that when I say Australian boxing, who comes to your mind? If you can give me a few Australian champions.
Well, obviously,
Yeah,
Fennick, his physicality, his mental toughness, uh, you know, his style, fan-friendly style, uh, a guy that was probably an overachiever, probably accomplished things that a lot of guys would have looked at him early on, said he's not the fastest guy. He's a good, solid puncher, but not the greatest puncher in the world,
yeah,
not the most
yeah,
explosive TNT guy. You know, he, sometimes he was clever in his own way, but you could find him. He was in front of you.
yeah.
And a lot of people would say, oh, he'll do okay to a certain level. Well, he did better than okay. He
He
got
sure did.
to the place where he won a world title and
Three
fought
divisions
tremendous
or
fighters.
four divisions,
So,
actually. Yeah.
you know, I mean, he is one of the guys that uh, definitely stands out. You name a few of them, and I'll tell you how I think of them.
Lionel Rose.
Yeah, look, the thing about yes, but the thing about Australian fighters is I always seem I don't stereotype anyone, but I seem to feel sometimes there is a connection. There is a connection with people from certain places.
Yeah.
And with the Australian fighters down under, I feel that there's a certain mental toughness that is inherent in the ones I've seen, most of them.
Yeah.
And also, not only that, but a certain, as I touched on with Fennick, a certain physicality. What was the what's the guy, the smaller guy, lightweight that just pulled off the upset?
Was it George Gambosis against Lopez?
Yeah, that was a
Oh,
while ago.
Liam Paro. Liam Paro. Very
Yeah,
good
now
fighter.
that guy,
He went to Puerto
he
Rico
goes into
against the
the Lions
Boogeyman.
Den
Yeah.
and he beats Matias, who's,
Yep.
I mean, Matias is the real deal. Matias, I know he's predictable. I know he's one dimension, but what a dimension! I mean, he he's a punching machine. He punches well. He throws all straight punches. He's mentally tough. He's fire tested. You know, I mean, Per was a big dog in that fight.
Oh yeah,
The
great
fight
effort.
was in Puerto Rico,
Yep.
and look what he does. He had a great combination of toughness, enough physicality, and at the same time enough dimension to him where he could also exploit some of the places where Matias could be exploited
Yeah.
on the outside.
It was unbelievable.
With the jab, with the boxing area. I mean, the guy deserves to really be applauded for that. I love Matias. I love him. But what an effort. And what a well-designed fight plan. And the discipline. Texas and Cambosis. You mentioned him. He's done well. And he's made money. And he's done something nobody thought he could do when he beat Teofimo Lopez.
100%.
But he doesn't get enough credit, really. They look at it as one and done. I don't look at it as one and done. I really don't. I might look, quite frankly, you're going to talk to me, you're going to get the truth. What I believe to be the truth doesn't mean I'm right. But some people won't like it.
Yeah.
But then don't talk to me. It's okay. But I don't think Jeff Horn fits into that. But I do think Cambosis does.
Yeah.
Cambosis was not one and done. He got off the floor to beat Teofimo.
He did.
He fought the best guys after that with Haney twice.
Lomachenko.
You know, and then he goes in with one of the great fighters of our time. He doesn't get enough credit. Lomachenko, one of the great fighters
Unbelievable.
of our time.
Yeah.
And, you know, gets beaten soundly, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But he will beat and still will beat a lot of guys. I mean, the guys that he's lost to that maybe you dismiss him with now are top guys.
Top of the top
guys.
Yep, definitely.
And the guy that he beat in Teofimo is back on top again.
Yeah, he's the Ring Magazine champion.
I don't think Cambosis, I know he's made money, thank goodness. All fighters should. Anyone who gets in the ring and risks themselves should.
Yeah.
I always say, when I used to go nuts on ESPN and fight for the fighters and got myself in trouble sometimes, the reason I was so passionate and crazed about it was because I understood that, well, a lot of people didn't, that when a fighter gets in the ring, quite often they leave with less of themselves.
Yeah.
And for a judge to rob them, to stand there with a pencil, a silly pencil, and rob a man like that,
it's disgusting,
who now is relegated to going to the back of the line quite often and having to face hundreds, maybe thousands of punches to hope to get back to where they were, which was at the front of the line, a place where they were getting closer already to getting out eventually, where they and accomplishing what they were in it for, which was to achieve greatness, to achieve history, to satisfy personal goals, to have a legacy, but most important, to take care of their family.
Yeah.
And to send them to the back of the line because you're corrupt or because you're incompetent as a judge is just a sin. It's a crime. So again, I say what I believe, and and whatever the consequences are, it happened. They are, but at the end of the day, you know, I can, I can at least, I can at least feel. I'm not going to be corny and say I can look in the mirror. That gets a little corny after a while
Yeah,
because I know a lot of people look in the mirror, and I don't think a lot of those people that look in the mirror. But at the end of the day, at least I can. You got to live with yourself before you can live with others.
very true, Teddy. Well, what's your opinion of my good friend Tim Tszyu? Do you like Tim?
Zoo,
Yeah,
powerful guy, special, very, very a good puncher. Um, a guy that made you fight his fight. A
yeah,
guy whose style was difficult, but he found a way to make you fight his fight for the most part. Um, Guy who could mix it up. He could also counterpunch. Tremendous amateur pedigree. He could counterpunch on the outside and mix it up. He had that dimension. Um, you know, he had a great chin. Um, he,
yep. I sure do, mate. So yeah. So we're just talking about the great son of the great Costa Zoo, Tim Tszyu, and he obviously I thought he
we're
was very
talking
unlucky.
about, we were just talking about Costas, though.
Costa Zoo, yeah. Well, he was one of the greatest, mate. I had the opportunity to spar Costa back in the '90s, and we're still good, very good friends today. He was a great amateur, great professional, and definitely one of the best 140 pounders. What do you think of his son Tim? How do you think Tim's progression's coming along?
But the part we talked about his father, you have that, right?
I do, I do.
Okay. Um, no, I like his son Tim a lot. I think it was I think it was unfortunate. I think it was unfortunate, and I don't take anything away from Fondora, but the heart that he showed, um, and that he adjusted himself in that fight to fight more on the outside than he had when he got knocked out and lost his first fight to Mendoza, I think it was. But I I just think that it was with the blood, with the bleeding, that was never stemmed. It was never slowed down. It was in a bad spot where it was
Very bad,
pumping out
very
from
bad.
the head because the head cuts they pump, and it
Yeah.
was pumping out all night. And I just I thought obviously that it changed the course of the fight. I'm not again. I'm not the person to make excuses or to take something away from somebody. But and I give Fedora credit for the way he fought. And again, he adjusted and fought more on the outside than he had. But I thought that was almost irresponsible, really, for the referee not to have stopped that
Yeah.
um, and made it either no contest
No
or
contest.
whatever. What
Yeah.
go to the scorecards if it was
Go.
early enough, whatever.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
just make it a no contest and do it again. But that's not what happened. He was burdened with that situation. He didn't complain about it.
Nah.
I give him credit. I admire the way he handled it. He handled it like a gentleman. He handled it the way a champion should handle it. A person that wants to be champion should handle it like a man. He didn't. Again, he didn't make excuses. He didn't really do anything other than deal with what happened and give credit to Fondora. I do. Again, I do think that it would have been a different result. I do. Doesn't
I
mean that I'm right.
I think so
If
too.
if it wasn't for that. But I I want to see him. He's a guy that obviously leading up to that fight, I wanted to see more. I wanted to see how good he could really be because I looked at him as still a work in progress, a guy that was going to continue to get better,
Yeah.
was continue to improve. I like his style. He's a fan friendly style. Um, I like his offense. I like that he's also technically pretty sound.
Yeah.
A lot of guys could improve on defense. Sometimes, does he stand up in front of you? Does he maybe, throw one punch too many in the same spot? But those are things that I thought he could continue to work on and improve. The core of what he was is what I like, and what I found intriguing to follow, and had a desire to follow, and how much he would continue to improve, because I had seen improvement with him from a year earlier, a year and a half earlier. So, and like I said, I thought that he was going to continue to improve. So, and his own man, never tried to attach himself to the father to the point where, he was trying to use that to get somewhere.
No,
He got there, he got there by performing,
sure
by
did.
going out, doing what he had to do. And like I said, his father was a unique guy, a unique style, and of course different. His father had that pedigree of the amateurs, had that,
Yeah.
and that he was a world amateur champ. I mean, he had a huge amateur career, which, as far as I know, Tim Tszyu did not have that kind of amateur career, that extensive.
No, he
That
had
that,
about 30 fights or something. Not
that
not a
makes it
lot.
more impressive
Yeah.
to me. That makes it more impressive, of how he got to where he got to as quickly as he did, without that big of amateur career. Number one, and number two, it kind of speaks to what I was saying, that when I see a guy that accomplishes great things in 20, 30 amateur fights, I look at him differently than a guy that did it with 200, because I look at it, as I touched on, that there's still room for improvement. There's still, you still can go higher. There's no ceiling. There's no ceiling. When you got 200 amateur fights, you get to a place where that's about as good as you're going to get.
That's
You're going to
right.
get more. You're going to get more mature. You're going to get a little more confident in the pro. But as far as learning, and you've gotten to close to your ceiling. When you got 20, 30 amateur fights, there's a lot of room in that ceiling, and that's how I felt about Costa's son.
Yeah. Before we finish up, Teddy, would just give me your rundown of. I respect your boxing knowledge so much, and I always talk about the greats. Do you have a top 5 pound for pound of all time list? Because I always see talk about the Ray Robertsons, the Joe Lewis's, the Willie Peps, Henry Armstrongs, Harry Grebs. Do you have a top 5 pound for pound that you sort of stick to of all time?
Well, let me look at my list. I have a list. When I was doing all the fights, I created a list. And for you, just for you, I'm gonna go into that just for you.
Thanks,
I'm
Teddy.
gonna open that old book, and I'm gonna even let people know that I'm getting old, and I'm gonna look. I'm gonna look at. I know it. I mean, I could do it without looking,
Of course you
but
could.
I'm,
Because
I'm gonna. I want to be accurate. My greatest fighters of all time. All right. Number 1, Sugar Ray Robinson. Number
Yep.
2, Henry Armstrong. Number 3, Muhammad Ali. Number 4, Benny Leonard. Number 5, Sam Langford. Number 6, Harry Greb. Number 7, this is going to make you happy, Willie Pep.
Yep.
Number 8, Gene Tunney.
Yep.
Number 9, Jack Johnson.
Wow.
And number 10, and I could easily move him up. Easily. One of my favorites. Actually, my favorite heavyweight of all time, Joe Louis.
Yep.
So, and then honorable mention, Archie Moore, Roberto Duran, Sandy Sadler, Carlos Monzon, Mickey Walker, Ezra Charles, Tony Canzoneri, Barney Ross, Lou Ampers, Jack Dempsey, John L. Sullivan, Joe Gantz. I think it's a pretty good list. Okay.
It's a good list, Teddy. Yeah, I was waiting for Roberto Duran. I was waiting for you to mention Roberto. I'm surprised there's no Sugar Ray Leonard though.
Sugar Ray Leonard too. I don't know why I left him out,
Because
but
yeah, well, no,
no, one of my favorite fighters of all time. One of the ones that I feel could fit into any era. As I was talking about earlier. So I don't know why. I don't know why his name got lost from here because it used to be here.
yeah.
But
I'm very similar, Teddy, to you. Obviously, I've got Ray Robertson, I've got Henry Armstrong, I've got Joe Louis, I've got Ali, I've got Harry Greb, Willie Pep. I've got a couple of modern day ones. I think Pernell Whitaker is in any era could have beaten anyone. I think he's probably the greatest lightweight besides Roberto Duran.
yeah, I was just gonna say, I'm remiss in forgetting Sugar Ray, which again, if you hear me talk on my podcast on ESPN,
Yeah,
I always talk about him. He's one of the greatest fighters, could fit into any era.
yeah,
One
I
of
think
my
so.
one of my favorite fighters. But
Yeah,
Pernell Whitaker, Sweet Pea is another
yeah,
one that
unbelievable.
doesn't just doesn't get the
Doesn't
due
get
that
enough. Yeah, I
no,
loved him. I thought he could hit and not be hit. It was the perfect, and that's boxing, hit and not be hit. He was unbelievable. He'd stand in front of you, and you couldn't hit him with a handful of rice. He was unbelievable.
yeah,
I
the old
also,
time say that. And
I,
the problem with boxing, Grant, boxing goes back so far. Thousands of years. It goes back into if you go to the to the to the people that go the anti that go and find fossils and uh they go and they check the old history. There have been there have been findings of pictures of fighters, illustrated pictures over 2,000 years old in dwellings in caves where it's two people with their fist up that illustrates fighting. I mean, we don't even know how far back the sport goes. It goes that far.
right.
And I will tell you that with with all the other sports that have not been around, baseball's been around a long time, but all the other sports that have not been around as long as and the consequences, of course, can't be as great as they are in boxing. But what's unfair to me, and what I try my best when I'm given the opportunity to do, is to give the dues to the old fighters because the young people, the sport itself, does not really do justice to the history of the sport.
It doesn't.
There's nowhere out there, there's no one out there that there is outlets for it in baseball, basketball, football. There is. But in boxing, there's no outlets really available to people and to the youth to know about these great fighters, to know about the history of this great sport. And it's a shame.
Yeah,
It's a
it
shame.
is. I'm always educating people on the history, and I'm very much, like my father and grandfather. We spoke about the old timers, Archie Moore, Jersey Joe Walcott, Ezard Charles. As I said, like Ken Buchanan, the Jimmy Wild. Um, so many legends, and a couple other ones there too. I like to get a mention: Julio Cesar Chavez and
Yes,
Alexis
maybe the
Aguayo.
greatest. Yeah, maybe
Uh,
if you're going to ask me about guys like that, individuals,
Alexis
then
Aguayo.
yeah, ask me about weight classes.
Yeah,
If you're gonna ask me about someone like Chavez, I would say okay.
super
You ask
lightweight,
me
super
about
fella.
the, the greatest lightweights or
Yeah,
you know lightweights of all time.
yeah.
Um, and for that, let me see if I find my lightweights. Uh, I know that he's on the list.
Yeah.
He's on the list of some of the greatest. I'll give you my greatest bantamweights. Uh, AC Brown, Elder Jaffe, Ruben Olivares,
Ruben
Carlos
Alvarez. Yep.
fighting Harada, Manuel Ortiz. I mean, the young people don't know these guys.
No, of
Orlando,
course not. No.
Jeff Chandler, Ray Raton Macias, Pete Herman, and
Yep.
then featherweights. Sandy Sadler, Willie Pep, Abe
Yep.
Attell, Kid Chocolate, Salvador Sanchez.
Salvador Sanchez. Yep.
I mean, Fredo Gomez,
Yep.
Vincent Saldivar, Azuma Nelson, who, of course, Costas,
Jeff Fennick.
Fennick
That's
knows very
right.
well.
Yeah.
Johnny Dunne. So
Many great fighters. Jose Napoles was a good fighter too.
Yeah, he was a great welterweight. And Sugar Ray Robinson, greatest welterweight. Henry Armstrong, second. Mickey Walker, Jose Napoles, number 4 with me. Barney Ross.
Barney
Kid
Ross,
Kid Gavilan.
Unbelievable.
Sugar Ray Leonard, here he is. Ted Kid Lewis.
So was that Charlie Burley?
And number 10. And I even wrote next to it. And of course, Charlie Burley. So you, my friend, are the real deal. You really are. You should have a podcast. You really, you are the, oh my goodness. I didn't know you were, but I know you are. You just showed to me that you truly are.
It means a lot. Yeah, well, that's why I've been wanting to meet you for so long. When we met in Saudi, we didn't have a lot of time to talk because there were so many people around. But I've always admired you, Teddy, and yeah, I sort of, I like to think that I sort of know a bit about the history of the sport. So coming from you, that's really a big rap for me. Thank you so much.
No, you showed it to me. The proof is in the pudding. I'm impressed. I got to tell you,
God bless.
I'm taken back a little bit. I'm like, wow. Oh, wow.
Yeah. Well, listen, I've got to go and train some boxers now. So, because it's about lunchtime here in Australia, in Melbourne, and but I love to do this again.
It's bedtime over here.
I know. I can't thank you enough for your time, Teddy, and I'd love to talk to you again sometime.